What if the one piece of evidence that could expose the truth comes from a man who is nowhere to be found? A signed confession suddenly appears in court, and it carries a shocking name, Christopher Hughes. The entire courtroom falls silent. If this confession is real, it could prove that Pioneer Electric was responsible for the fire that destroyed an entire town. But there's one huge problem. Christopher Hughes isn't here to say it himself. So the question everyone is asking is simple but terrifying. Why isn't he standing in this courtroom? The courtroom is completely quiet. Every person in the room is waiting, watching, and holding their breath. On the judge's desk sits a single piece of paper. It doesn't look important at first glance, but everyone in the room knows that this paper could change everything. Written at the top are the words, "Signed Confession of Christopher Hughes." The moment those words are read out loud, a wave of whispers spreads across the courtroom. People turn to each other, confused and shocked. Christopher Hughes is a name everyone knows. He worked closely with the powerful company called Pioneer Electric. For months, the town has been trying to prove that Pioneer Electric caused the terrible fire that destroyed homes, businesses, and lives. But until now, there has never been solid proof. That is why this confession is so important. The lawyer slowly stands up and begins reading the document. His voice echoes through the silent room. According to the statement, Christopher Hughes admits that Pioneer Electric ignored serious safety warnings. The company knew their equipment was dangerous. They knew a disaster could happen. And yet, they did nothing. Gasps spread through the courtroom as the truth begins to unfold. For the families who lost everything, this confession feels like justice finally knocking at the door. Some people in the room look relieved. Others look angry. But most of them simply look stunned. But before the lawyer can continue reading, another voice interrupts. A second attorney stands up quickly and raises a powerful question. If this confession is real, he says firmly, then where is Mr. Hughes? The question hangs in the air like a dark cloud. Everyone in the courtroom suddenly realizes something strange. The man whose words could expose the entire truth is not here to speak them. Christopher Hughes has not appeared in court. He has not answered questions. He has not confirmed the confession himself, and that changes everything without Hughes present. The defense immediately begins to challenge the document. They argue that a written confession means nothing if the person who signed it is missing. Anyone could claim it was written under pressure. Anyone could question whether it is even real. The tension in the room grows stronger. On one side of the courtroom, the townspeople sit quietly. Many of them lost their homes in the fire. Some lost loved ones. For them, this trial is not just about money or business mistakes. It is about truth. On the other side sit the representatives of Pioneer Electric. Their faces remain calm, almost confident. They know that if Hughes does not appear, the confession might not be enough to prove their guilt. The judge listens carefully as both sides argue. His expression is serious and unreadable. Finally, he speaks. This court will review the document carefully, the judge says. But the absence of Mr. Hughes raises important questions. Those words send another wave of worry through the courtroom because everyone understands what it means. If Christopher Hughes does not show up, the confession might not matter at all. And suddenly, the biggest mystery in the entire trial is no longer the fire. It is the missing man who knows the truth. Somewhere out there, Christopher Hughes is the key to everything. The question is, why hasn't he come forward? Is he hiding? Is he afraid? Or is there something even darker preventing him from speaking? As the courtroom slowly falls silent again, one thing becomes clear. The trial is far from over. In fact, the real drama may just be beginning. And until Christopher Hughes appears, the truth behind Pioneer Electric may remain locked away in silence. A single question changes the mood of the entire courtroom. Where is Christopher Hughes? Only minutes ago, the confession felt like the final piece of the puzzle. It sounded like the truth was finally about to come out. But now the room is filled with doubt. A confession without the man who wrote it suddenly feels fragile. It's like a story missing its most important voice. The lawyer representing the town slowly walks forward. His face shows determination, but also concern. He explains that the signed document clearly states that Hughes once worked closely with Pioneer Electric and had inside knowledge of the company's safety failures. According to the confession, Hughes personally warned company leaders about serious risks in their electrical systems. He told them the equipment was unstable. He told them a fire could happen, but the warnings were ignored. The lawyer pauses, letting the words sink in. People in the courtroom shift in their seats. Some of the townspeople stare at the company representatives sitting across the room. Their expressions are filled with anger and pain. Then the defense attorney rises quickly. His voice is calm, but every word is sharp. A document is not a witness, he says firmly. If Mr. Hughes truly made these claims, then he should be here to repeat them under oath. His argument hits hard. Even the judge leans back slightly, thinking carefully, because the truth is simple. Without Christopher Hughes in the courtroom, the confession becomes a question instead of an answer. The defense continues pressing the issue. They suggest several possibilities. Maybe Hughes changed his mind. Maybe he wrote the confession under pressure. Maybe someone else pushed him to say things that were not true. The courtroom grows restless. In the back rows, people whisper quietly to each other. Many of them lived through the night the fire destroyed their town. They remember the smoke, the panic, and the fear spreading through the streets. For them, this trial is not just another legal battle. It is the moment they have waited for ever since. Their lives changed forever, and now that moment feels uncertain again. The judge raises his hand, signaling for silence. We will focus on the facts, he says in a steady voice. This court needs to understand why Mr. Hughes is not present. That statement shifts the attention of the entire room. Suddenly, the missing man becomes the center of the story. The town's lawyer explains that Hughes disappeared shortly after submitting the confession. He had promised to testify. He had promised to stand in court and explain everything he knew. But then, without warning, he stopped answering calls. No messages, no explanation, nothing. The defense quickly reacts, suggesting that this disappearance might not be suspicious at all. They argue that Hughes could simply be avoiding attention or trying to protect himself from public pressure. But the townspeople are not convinced. A woman sitting in the front row grips the edge of her seat tightly. Her house was one of the first homes destroyed in the fire. To her, the idea that the truth might disappear along with Christopher Hughes feels unbearable. Meanwhile, the representatives of Pioneer Electric remain strangely calm. Their lawyers whisper quietly with each other, occasionally glancing toward the judge with confident expressions. They know something important. If Hughes never appears, the confession may not be strong enough to prove anything, and that could allow the company to walk away without punishment. The judge finally speaks again. This court will continue to review the confession, he announces. But the testimony of Mr. Hughes remains critical. The room grows silent once more. Everyone understands what that means. Without Christopher Hughes, the case is standing on weak ground. But somewhere outside this courtroom, the man who knows the full truth is still out there. And whether he returns or stays hidden may decide the fate of an entire town. Because if Christopher Hughes never walks through those courtroom doors, the people responsible for the fire might never be held accountable, and justice could slip away just as quickly as it appeared. Just when the courtroom begins to calm down, a darker truth starts to surface. The case is no longer only about a missing witness. Now the focus slowly turns toward the powerful company at the center of the disaster, Pioneer Electric. For months, the town has suspected that something was wrong. The fire that destroyed homes and businesses did not feel like a simple accident. Too many strange details appeared from the very beginning. Electrical lines failed at the same time. Warning signals were ignored. Maintenance reports suddenly disappeared. And now, Christopher Hughes's confession has made those suspicions even stronger. The town's lawyer stands again. He begins explaining the deeper story behind the company. According to the documents collected during the investigation, several engineers had raised safety concerns long before the fire happened. They reported unstable power lines and equipment that had not been properly repaired. Those reports were supposed to be reviewed by company leaders, but somehow they never were. Instead, the problems were pushed aside. Maintenance was delayed. Safety checks were postponed. And slowly, the risks continued to grow. The lawyer walks toward the jury, holding a thick folder filled with records. Inside are maintenance logs, safety warnings, and internal messages. Each page tells the same story. People inside the company knew the danger existed, and yet, nothing was done. A quiet wave of anger spreads through the courtroom. The people sitting in the gallery begin to understand that the fire might never have happened if someone had simply